Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Emily Cegielski, the editorial director here at Worth, and I'm thrilled you could join us for this session in partnership with the Purpose Summit on how leaders can harness the power of purpose to attract talent and make a difference. This afternoon, I'm joined by some very special guests. Davin Salvagno, founder and CEO of PurposePoint, co-founder of the Purpose Summit, and author of Finding Purpose at Work. Dr. Amber Selking, VP of Leadership and Culture at Lippert, founder of Selking Performance Group, mental performance coach for college football, and author of Winning the Mental Game, the Playbook for Building Championship Mindsets, which is out today. And then our last speaker, I'm actually going to let him introduce himself, Mr. Garry Ridge.
Hey, g'day, I'm Garry Ridge. I'm the consciously incompetent, probably wrong, and roughly right Chairman and CEO of WD-40 Company, with my friend here today, Al, the soul-sucking CEO.
See,
So
I
good.
couldn't have done that. Yeah. Thank you. All three of our guests today will also be at the upcoming Purpose Summit, taking place May 17th through 19th at the University of Notre Dame. And Worth is incredibly proud to be a media partner for that event. Make sure you reserve your tickets for what promises to be a 3-day transformative experience for leaders to refocus on leading self, leading others, and leading impact. You can find a link to buy tickets to the Purpose Summit in the chat box. And as a gift from Worth, for joining today's session, you can use the code WORTH200 to get $200 off your ticket prices, which is pretty incredible. So, you might want to get that. Now, just a few housekeeping items before we begin. Everyone is muted on entry, but this is meant to be a conversation. So we encourage you to ask questions either through the Q&A function or the chat box, and we will incorporate them into our discussion. We probably don't have time to unmute everyone, but I will make sure that any questions get worked into our discussion. Now, on to the main event. Despite ample forewarning, the pandemic-fueled Great Resignation left many companies blindsided, struggling to maintain and attract talent. But with a record population of people available to work, the reality is there's no labor shortage. There's a leadership shortage. The traditional workplace currency, money, has been overthrown for an even more precious commodity, time. And it's the leaders who understand this, who understand that employees are searching for a sense of purpose and meaning in their work. Otherwise it's worth their time. Those are the leaders that will thrive. So during this conversation, we will be diving into the intersection of leadership and purpose, the importance of purposeful leaders, and how leaders can utilize the power of purpose to usher in the great restoration. I'd love to start with a personal check-in. Obviously, the last couple of years have been crazy. So how are you all holding up? How are you guys doing? Davin, you want to start?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for hosting us today. It's just great to be here and with these incredible people. And the last couple of years have been challenging for all of us, for everyone. And it's been 2 years of pivoting and perseverance. And, one thing that has kept me going and kept our team going is, we have clarity of what our purpose is and what we're here to do. And when you have that, it's a lot easier to pivot and to persevere. And so it's been a challenging time, and we've just continued to find ways to make a difference and reach people given the challenges that we've had.
That's pretty much all you can do. Amber, you wrote a book in the last couple of years. Is that what you did during the lockdown?
Yeah. So, when all the fun things get shut down in the world, why not fill it with more opportunity work, right? And so, again, to echo Davin's point, thanks so much for having us today. And thank you to all of you who are joining us to engage in these critical conversations on leadership, because if the last 2 years have taught us anything, it's that there is a deep need and hunger in our world to build bridges and to help people find more about who they've been created and called to be and how to show up in the world with that on a day-to-day basis. And so while it's certainly been a challenging couple years, I also think it has revealed to us the heart of being human, which is having a sense of meaning and purpose, being connected to people that encourage and inspire and actually matter to you. And so I think that, the isolation to a degree I think he's brought some clarity, and the opportunity to write this book, Winning the Mental Game, was really, to Davin's point, all of our heart and intent is to serve others and to help keep us moving forward. And this book is really intended to be a bridge for people, to navigate the mental and emotional challenges that the last 2 years have presented, but also give people tools and resources to help them navigate the way ahead, to rebuild their lives if it was slightly destructive for whatever way, and then to just continue to flourish as people and professionals. So it's been an interesting but rewarding last couple of years.
That's great. Garry, how have you been? How have you held up over the last couple of years?
Well, I've learned some new words. You're on mute, resilience. But I think what it's done, it's really given us an opportunity to understand how to deal with uncertainty. And I love a quote from Dr. Rebecca Homkes. She says, "Uncertainty is a series of future events that may or may not occur." And we've been through a period of pretty extreme uncertainty. But like Dr. Amber said, I think what it's really done is truly emphasize the need of belonging. We are social individuals and we need somewhere to belong to. And this great resignation that they're talking about now, I've renamed it. I call it the Great Escape. People are escaping toxic cultures. In fact, I wrote an article back in 2018, I think it was, the gratitude of belonging. And in that, we talked about how people need to belong. Everyone on this call today has left at some stage in their life a party, an event, a job, or even a relationship because they didn't feel like they belong. So we've got to continue to build belonging, and that's really important. And I'll get rid of Al now because he's not really that nice. But if you do come to the summit, I do promise I will have free Al dolls for people who come along. So bye, Al.
Oh, excellent.
That actually leads me into my next question for you, Davin, as the co-founder of the Purpose Summit. Can you tell us a little bit about how that started and what attendees can expect this year?
Absolutely. Well, as Garry just alluded to, this idea of the Great Resignation, there's kind of a misconception actually that this was brought about by COVID. And the reality is that it wasn't. This has been happening for, honestly, I just shared recently that the Great Resignation was the result of decades of companies treating people like human doings rather than human beings. And so what's happening, to Garry's point, is that there's been this longing for an escape, a change of what we know the workplace to be. And so back in 2018, we started to really see evidence of this shift. There's been tons of different articles and blogs written by, HBR, and things done by work by McKinsey and by Gallup, and tons of different research out there that you could see that 75% of people who left their jobs in 2018 were leaving because they were looking for more purpose and meaning. And many of them were taking a pay cut to actually go to a job where they can find more purpose and meaning back before COVID. So COVID just really was gas on the fire and fueled this. And so back when this was happening in 2018, myself and a bunch of other speakers had gotten together and we said, we recognize that there is this massive gap in the workplace, particularly in leadership. And it's understanding how individual purpose and organizational purpose relate to each other. And if we can understand as organizational leaders why people come to work for us and what their purpose is and how that shows up in the work that they do every day, so that they understand that they matter, that they belong, and they make a difference, then they not only are going to come and work for us and stay, but they're going to go home feeling fulfilled rather than empty. They're going to go home and give their best to their families rather than giving the leftovers to their families. And so that was the essence of how the summit started back in 2019. And this is now the third year that we're doing the summit. And what's amazing is these incredible people, Dr. Amber, Selking, and Garry Ridge, we've all been on each other's podcasts. They've been on my podcast several times. And last year, Garry couldn't make the summit and he said, hey, I'll be there next year. But Dr. Amber came and she brought her team of 24 leaders.
Wow.
And it was a really special 3 days. And she said, you know what? This conversation is so important. It needs to be done on a bigger level. How do we do this next year? together on a bigger scale. And I said, well, where could we do that? And she wanted to do it somewhere in Indiana. And I'm like, where could we do something in Indiana that would be on a bigger scale? And she's like, well, there's this place called Notre Dame, right? And so then she made a call, and lo and behold, the next thing you know is the Purpose Summit's happening at Notre Dame. So May 17th, 18th, and 19th, hundreds of leaders from around the world. I mean, Amber's got people from her team coming from Europe. There's people coming from every continent practically in the United States, outside the United States, coming to Notre Dame for 3 days to understand what does it look like to lead ourselves, lead others, and lead impact. To use a phrase that Amber is familiar with, champion business as a force for good in the world, so that we can make the difference that we were created to make, both as individuals and organizational leaders. And that's what the summit's all about.
I know there's going to be some members of our team at the summit as well, and we're very excited. Garry, I know you're going to be speaking at this year's summit, so can you give us a sneak peek into what you'll be discussing, or is it a secret?
Oh, no. Well, it'll be the thing. I'm bringing my soapbox, and it's really a soapbox about how people like Al, the soul-sucking CEO, creates a toxic culture. He's the CEO of Fear Inc. Very, very not a very nice place at all. But it really gets down to, think of it like this. Imagine a place where you go to work every day. You make a contribution to something bigger than yourself. You learn something new. You're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and you go home happy. Happy people create happy families. Happy families create happy communities. Happy communities create a happy world. We need a happy world. And who can do this? We can as leaders, because we're the ones that create these toxic cultures. You talk about purpose, you think about, is what I'm doing at work worth part of my life? And when you think about life, what does that mean? When before COVID, as Davin was saying, people went to work, and we know that depending on who measures, between 16 and 33% of people were engaged. The rest of people that went to work were disengaged. When they went home, at least they went home to a life that was somewhat normal. Bang, COVID hit. Now, life is not somewhat normal, and work sucks. So what are they going to do? Unfortunately, some of them changed their personal life, but a lot of them said we're going to leave. So at the summit, we've got some beautiful scar tissue to show you on things that we've learned over the last 25 years. At WD-40 Company, we have a 93% employee engagement. 98% of our people say they love to tell people they work at the company, and 94% say they're excited about the company's future. And that's from our latest employee opinion survey that we did in March this year after COVID. And our engagement actually went up during that period. So, and it's truly because we're a group of people that come together to protect and feed each other. We're there to help each other grow. And it's not rocket science. So I'm going to be talking about the scar tissue, the learning moments that we've had over the last 25 years.
Well, that's incredibly impressive. And I feel like everyone get your tickets now just to hear Garry speak, because I know I want to hear that conversation. Let's dive into this intersection of leadership and purpose. And we are getting a lot of questions in. Some of the questions, we will get to everything. Some of them we're going to get to in our conversation. And if not, I'll bring them in. But keep sending your questions, everyone who's listening. I'm not forgetting you. I'm watching them come in. But I do want to get into this idea of the intersection of leadership and purpose, because they do go hand in hand. So why is that? How do the two intersect, and why, but more importantly, why is that intersection so important in today's day and age? Who wants to take it?
Go ahead, Davin. Go ahead, Garry.
I'll start off because they're absolutely linked.
Yes.
If you go back, Aristotle in 384 BC said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. So if we can put pleasure in the job around purpose, you think of our company. So let's say you work for us and I say, what's your purpose? We stop squeaks. Oh, boring. But what is our purpose? We create positive, lasting memories, solving problems in factories, homes, and workshops around the world. We solve problems and we create opportunities. So our role in our company is to create positive, lasting memories with the people that we work with every day, with the consumers and end users that we serve, with the vendors we deal with, even with our competition, and of course with our stakeholders. So these two things are absolutely joined, because it's that purpose that brings pleasure into the workplace.
So
And, oh, no, sorry, go ahead.
no, I just said so good. I'll say so good a lot. It just kind of happens on these types of things. It's Amber laughs at it because it happens all the time. But to Gary's point, that you can't separate leadership. Let me take that back. You can't separate good leadership from purpose, because the reality is we talk a lot about leadership. And at the end of the day, we know that leadership is influence. And since everyone has influence, everyone can be a leader. It's just, are you a good leader or you're a bad leader based off of the type of influence that you have, good or bad. And so for those that we consider good leaders, if I were to ask you, Emily, or anyone else on this call, hey, name some of the good leaders that you've had in your life. Almost undoubtedly, you would share with me people who left an indelible mark on your life because of who they helped you become through their leadership. You see, the greatest measure of purpose is who we help others become. And that's the essence of good leadership. So you can't separate purpose from good leadership. As Garry said, they're inseparable.
Well, how did we get to where we are now, though? I mean, I feel like there's always been like this, lack of really purpose and leadership, but with the Great Resignation happening right now, how should leaders be thinking about bringing purpose either back into the workplace or, to the workplace to begin with? I'd love to understand kind of the logistical application of putting purpose into practice as a leader, say if your employees are leaving right now.
I think Garry hit it on the head earlier when he talked about belonging, right? People have been created to be in community with one another and to have a sense of purpose and team and family. I mean, if you look at the history of humans, right, that's sort of what the story of humanity has been about communities and family and taking care of each other. And so in a world that has created so much division, I think business creates a unique opportunity for us to reinstill a sense of community and purpose and belonging to people. And so for us at Lippert, one of the things that we talk a lot about and we challenge a lot of companies on is, first of all, do you have a vision, a mission, a purpose statement, however you want to craft that? Do you have a set of core values that identify who you are at your core? So that's sort of step one. But then step two is, do those words live on a wall, or do they live in the hearts and minds and behaviors of your people on a day-to-day basis? And so that's really where the rubber needs to meet the road on this, where we need to make it more practical and pragmatic. And one of the things that I love most about our CEO, Jason Lippert, is that he is a high vision, high drive person. I mean, we want to change the world. We believe that business can be a catalyst to change the world if leaders recognize their opportunity and responsibility to create these environments that we know are conducive to human performance, but also human beings. And yet, as big vision as he is, his question is, okay, so what's the next step? What's the next thing we need to do? And he firmly believes, and he challenges all of us to, okay, all of that is great. What are we going to do about it? And so, and little by little, if you make small decisions over time, over the course of a year, over the course of 2 years, you wind up in a much different place than if you do nothing. And I think that's the challenge with things like purpose or identity, for individuals, for teams, and for organizations. It feels so big and ephemeral that we basically just don't do anything about it. But my challenge would be, do you have clarity on who you are, your organizational identity? And then what are the ways that you can take that off of the wall and bring it to life, whether that be through your orientation and onboarding experience, through your performance management, processes, through how you celebrate and recognize your team members. Are those things done in really intimate and personal and pragmatic ways? One of the other ways that, and then I'll stop here, sorry, but one of the other ways that we bring this to life, giving back to our communities and taking care of our communities is something that's really important to Lippert. We have a goal every year to have over 100,000 hours of community service done by our team members that we track and log to give back to our local communities. And then we have a budget, like a donation budget. Most big companies write big checks to one or two organizations. We write, God bless our corporate and community impact team, hundreds of small checks, anywhere from $100 to $500 to $2,000, you know, depends, because we write those checks to organizations that our team members are serving on. And those checks make a big difference to some of these smaller nonprofits. And so again, ways to really bring this to life into your team members' hearts and minds on a day-to-day basis, I think is the pragmatic conversation we need to be having.
Amber hit it on the head here. It's about consistency. You know, I don't know how many companies I've walked into and I've seen these values up on the wall. They need to be on the most coffee-stained piece of paper in the organization, and people have to live them every day. You know, when I was a young boy back in Australia at high school, I went to a science class, and the science teacher said, "We're going to grow some culture in this petri dish." And I said, that sounds interesting. So what did we do? We put some ingredients in this petri dish and we started to grow the culture. And what did the science teacher say to me? Watch that petri dish every day. And if toxins get in there, get them out. Because if you don't, that petri dish is going to go sour so quickly. So to us, culture equals values plus behavior times consistency. And it's got to be embedded in the organization, and you've got to live it every day. Otherwise, that petri dish will go sour. So good. So good.
So good. So good. Now Gary's making fun of me. It's so one other thing I'd add to that, Emily, is that we tend to talk a lot organizationally about what we can do. And these are all incredible things, right? Living mission, vision, values out, as Garry and Amber just talked about, right? Engaging your community, being philanthropic, right? Getting involved in causes. But one of the biggest misses that I often see is that there's this 2-4 with conversation, right? A lot of times people look at purpose or the work that we talk about as something that you have to do 2 people or 4 people. And it's not a 2 thing. It's not a 4 thing. It's a with thing. And the biggest thing that I often see happen is organizations will come up with new mission, vision, and values, but they didn't come up with them with their teams. They came up with them at a very high level leadership team, and then they pushed it down rather than it being something that's done together. Or they'll get involved in communities and say, hey, well, this specific cause is really near and dear to our CEO's heart, but there's other causes in that community that matter to the employees that are there. And so they're not having a conversation with the employees about, you know, how can we make a difference, and hearing their voice and implementing that. And probably the biggest thing is this. Matthew Kelly wrote a book called The Dream Manager years ago. And I joke with Jason Lippert because I've seen many people who've read this book and said, that sounds great. We're going to create a dream manager. Listen, Lippert ran the experiment better than any company I've ever seen actually execute that book. When they actually said, you know what, we are going to find out what our employees' goals and dreams are, and we're going to help them achieve those things. And so that's a big piece, is organizations don't often take the time to find out what the purpose of their people is and how they can help them achieve that purpose, both at work and at home. And that's the greatest opportunity and greatest responsibility that we have as business leaders. It's why WD-40 has a tribe of people, is because yes, they make oil in a can, but more importantly, it's who they make their people, both at work and at home. So good.
We'll be saying that for years to come here at Worth. So
we were joking the other day that it's a good thing that's Davin's podcast name, What Good Looks Like. So when he says that, it just builds the brand, you know, and people out of place.
I love that. That actually kind of brings me to a question from the audience. I'm going to butcher his name. I'm so sorry. Joe Unknown. He had a question for you, Garry. What is the #1 highlight of what you are providing for your company and employees that others can use? And that actually relates back to a question I had about some of the biggest lessons you've learned over the years, as well as any big challenges that you've had to face. You've been running WD-40 with purpose in mind for a while now. So I'd love to tap into some of that.
Well, I think the number one gift that our employees or our tribe members give us is the gift of caring. We care for each other. Our tribal promise is a group of people that come together to protect and feed each other. That's why we get up each day, is to absolutely do that. So, I think that's the point of difference, is we do actually care about each other. And our interesting thing is that we don't have any managers in our company. Everybody's called a coach. So the coach's role is not to micromanage, run on the field and try and play the game. The coach's role is to help the players step into the best version of their personal self on an ongoing basis. You don't see, the number one football coach running onto the field, picking up the ball and kicking a field goal. But you do see them animated along the try line and spending a lot of time in the locker room, understanding the play and helping them understand the culture. So, I think that's the gift we all give each other. And, I've been so grateful. I've been CEO of WD-40 for 25 years, with the company for 35 years. So, I've had the opportunity to play with some amazing people in our tribe. And I get to stand on the shoulders of giants every day. I happen to plant the seed, but it's their tree. Our culture is truly a competitive advantage at our company, and something that we all treasure really greatly. And what was the other part of the question, Emily? Where did...
I guess, what are some of the challenges that you have faced over the course of your time running WD-40, especially when it comes to purpose? Have you had any struggles? And if so, how have you dealt with them?
Oh, I've never made a mistake in my life. What I've had,
So good.
what I have is millions of learning moments. So one of the things that we did to really help us understand this is we removed the word failure from our company. So we don't make mistakes, we have learning moments. And a learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that needs to be openly and freely shared to benefit all people, which had we had one reason for doing that. We wanted to take away fear, because fear is one of the biggest disablers we have in life. So I think, one of the things that we loved about doing that is it brought freedom and transparency. So, we've made huge numbers of learning moments along the way. I have a lot of scar tissue along the way, but it's not learning or scar tissue it was in vain. It was stuff that really helped us step into the best version of our personal self.
So good.
I think that's great. And I'm sure that there are certain people who are listening now or will be listening later who are struggling with finding their purpose, whether it's within their organization or their team or in life. And I'm wondering if you guys have any advice as to kind of what steps people should take when they are struggling, whether it's from an organizational perspective or even from an individual perspective. Amber, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think when we explore these big questions of purpose and identity, they can seem really overwhelming. But I would, and listen, the brain is designed to protect us. And so when it feels like it's overwhelming, it's just easier to shut down. And so when we think about, I must find my life's purpose, that can feel daunting. But if we bring it down and sort of isolate and shrink the game, the brain is like, well, I can do that. And so, I really encourage people to just sit if we're talking personal identity, right? Pick a book that you like to go through and work through some of this. Parker Palmer's book, like Let Your Life Speak, is a really powerful, simple, short book that challenges people to think about their identity. And then sit with some questions like what are the things that you do that fuel you, that energize you? What are the things that you do that drain you and suck the life out of you? What kinds of people energize you? What kinds of people deplete you? And really, as you consider it, as you continue to think through and wrestle with some of these basic questions, like it becomes more clear. We use a lot of personality assessments, not to like peg or pigeonhole people, but to just raise people's level of awareness. I think, for example, a lot of introverts I've worked with, they spend their whole lives like thinking they should be extroverted and wondering, thinking they're a failure because they don't, they don't love being around people for an extended period of time, or they feel drained afterwards, when really introverts, they just need to get their energy from quiet time. And so building that into their days keeps them energized so that they can be present with people. It's not that they don't like people. It's just, where do you get in your energy from? And then the other thing that I like to have people think about is, what are some of the similar threads that as you look back in your life, regardless of what role you played, right? We talk a lot about like the man or woman under the jersey, or the man or woman under the quarter zip or polo or suit jacket, whatever you wear to work, right? And so who is that person, like throughout your life, regardless of what role you've been in, that you've shown up as the idea person, or as the encourager, or as the planner and organizer, and like those will be indicators through a little bit of who you're wired to be. And then how do you start to see, again, regardless of the role, what purpose you can fill in these different places that we find ourselves. I think those would be some specific things people could maybe consider as it relates to individual purpose. There's a lot more. I mean, we could take a semester of grad school to talk about these things, but.
Absolutely. Garry, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. A friend of mine, Michael Bungay Stainer, just released a new book, and it's called How to Begin. And he talks in it about a worthy goal or a worthy purpose. And he says, is a worthy goal worth your life? And then, is it thrilling? Does it give you goosebumps? Is it important? Does it give more to the world than it takes away? And is it daunting? Does it stress you a little bit? Because I think it's got to be all those three things. So I think, that it's a great, another one of reference books that he just put out. He was the author of The Coaching Habit, which is my favorite coaching book, but it's really worth a look at if you're interested. The other thing is, I have a little sticky note on my computer, and it says, am I being the person I want to be right now? And then it says, who is that person? And the reason I have this sticky note on my computer is, I'm hopeless. I'll get drawn into things and be put in positions that I don't want to be in, because I'm not reminding myself of what Amber said, that thread that's important. So this little sticker in front of me says, who is that person? It says, I want to be grateful. I want to be caring. I want to be empathetic. I want to be reasonable. I want to be a listener. I want to be fact-based. I want to have a balanced opinion. I want to be curious. I want to be a learner. And I want to throw sunshine, not a shadow. Now, I have to have this in front of me, because at the end of the day, we're just these normal human beings bumbling our way down this little pathway of life. And in the bushes of these thieves like Al, the soul-sucking CEO, and they come out and grab us and they take us into these bushes. And what are in those bushes? Greed, envy, anger, all this stuff that attacks us every day. And suddenly we're there and we go, oh, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. So we have to continually remind ourselves of that. And Marshall Goldsmith taught me that technique. He wrote a great book too called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's a matter of just really understanding, what are these things that you don't want to be? And every morning, are you going to help yourself not be that? Because we'll screw up.
And that's, Garry, I think that's a great point, that a lot of people, like, they don't want to put Post-it notes up, and like, here's the thing, the brain is not a muscle in the scientific sense, but it functions like a muscle in the extent the parts of it that we use grow and get stronger. And when we get sucked into the bushes, like Garry said, or we get, down a tunnel, like, it's really hard in those moments to be like, oh, I wonder what a better way of thinking would be right now.
Do you think I'm dumb? Look at all the Post-it notes I've got up. Look at them all.
I love it. We need these visual reminders, because when we get drug into those bushes, that's often not our first reaction. And so having what we call these visual cues up and around us to remind us, how do I want to think? Because our thoughts set all of that on a trajectory to either be or not be who we intend in that moment. And again, we have to be mindful of that. Like, some brain science research is showing us that 75 to 98% of all mental and physical health issues are caused due to our thought life. And again, the number of times we get pulled away from who and how we want to operate is a lot. So those visual cues are simple reminders to bring us back. And every time we do that, we're repping health literally into our brain, because as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. And that's a truth that begins with our thoughts. And then that's how we show up. Like Garry said, culture is about behaviors. And that consistency of how a leader shows up will determine the ability of the whole tribe to get on board and to follow and to feel comfortable in this new state of becoming as it relates to purpose.
And Dr. Amber, we are such storytellers to ourselves.
Yes, amen. I know.
You know, Brené Brown says, in the absence of facts and data, we make up stories, and those stories become our truth. And when we don't have all of the facts and data, or we're put in these situations of stress, we make up some wonderful stories. We put some of the great story writers to shame, because we just make up these wonderful stories and they become our truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we tend to actually take those stories and we compare them to other people's stories, and then we rob ourselves of our purpose in the moment. You just shared something very critical, Garry, about like reflecting on right now, right? Amber's got an awesome acronym in her brand new book, WIN, that I've been using relentlessly since I've read it, which is what's important now. And it's catching ourselves in the moment and understanding our responsibility to the moment and to the lives of those around us. And the reality is, whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, or whatever the case is, you have something to contribute to every moment. And there's not some grandiose, I mean, we could, depending on where you're at in your faith walk, there's obviously a grandiose purpose that we could all say that is a grandiose purpose that we're a part of. But when we get down to individual purpose, each of us has many different purposes. There's not just one big thing, right? I mean, I have a purpose as a husband. I have a purpose as a father. I have a purpose as a leader. I have a purpose as an author. I have a purpose as a speaker. There's multiple different purposes that we can deliver on, but it's what does the moment need from you right now that is going to cause you to make an impact and a difference in the lives of those around you. And when we get so caught up in the stories that we tell ourselves, or in comparing ourselves to other stories, and we allow that distraction, which Dr. Amber Selking often says is the enemy, distraction is the enemy. When we allow that to get into our health, we rob ourselves of the purpose that we are meant to deliver on in the moment individually.
So good.
Thanks, Garry.
It was very good. So we actually have another question from Joe for Amber. What was the number one purpose that you hoped or expect your new book will have on people who read it, and how it will motivate others to transform their lives?
Great question. Yeah, and actually, fun fact, I looked down, I just got a text, my husband, it officially hit the #1 bestseller.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you to everybody who's purchased a copy today on Amazon. That means a lot. It's exciting. But you know, Joe, the intent, and it talks about this at the very front of the book, and I hit it again at the very end of the book. It says, like, my hope is that this book becomes a bridge for you to your next layer of greatness. The book is dedicated to that slight stirring of greatness that is within your soul. And I hope that it can fan that into flame. And so again, I believe that human beings want to be good and they want to do good, but I think there's a lot of things that happen in our lives, in the environment, that derail us from that. But I also believe that our brain is like the most beautiful gift that we've been given as humans. I have a beautiful Doberman pinscher named Rockney Mulligan right here beside me, aptly named after the American football coach in the Irish pub. And so, you know, and yet he doesn't have a brain like humans have. He doesn't have a soul. And so, and the sad part is, as humans, we tend to manage what we can see. We manage our checking account, we manage our P&L, we manage our waistline, but a lot of times we don't manage our thoughts because we don't understand the power of our brain to impact how we show up on a day-to-day basis. And so the purpose of this book is to teach people how their brain works, how it impacts how they show up, and then give them some tools and strategies, some very pragmatic and practical things that they can do to really lay a solid foundation for their mental game and to manage those distractions that Davin talks about, to manage the people trying to pull you back into the darkness and sort of ideals that you don't want to live into. And again, be that bridge to the next version of themselves. So that's the purpose and hope and intent of the book.
Love that. Davin, also a question for you from Joe. What does good really look like? Can you give us 2 major good highlights?
Well, you're looking at 2 examples of them on the screen right now. And I don't mean that to just be kind of a cheap plug, but the reality is I wrote about Lippert in Finding Purpose at Work, and I didn't come across Garry. I mean, our good friend Ken Blanchard, who I'm a little bit jealous. Garry gets to golf with like every single week. I just get to talk to him on the phone. But you know what WD-40 and Lippert have done are truly examples of what good looks like, and the name of the podcast came out of because I would look at organizations and I would say, wow, that right there, that's what good looks like. That's an example that other leaders, other organizations need to follow. In fact, on our previous podcast before What Good Looks Like was the Finding Purpose live cast. We did that when we launched the book, Finding Purpose at Work. And we did 40 episodes. Out of those 40 episodes, Emily, we did all of them via Zoom during COVID. There was only one that we did on site, and it was at Lippert. I was so enamored with hearing what was actually happening on in the company. I had to go see it for myself. So we got in the car, drove 3.5 hours to Indiana, and we did the podcast live because I had to see it. I needed to physically see this tremendous example of what good looks like. And so what you see at Lippert on social media in headlines, these employees who have a sense of belonging and are celebrating the difference they get to make together, that's real. And that's what good looks like. And then at WD-40, oh my gosh, we're constantly talking to companies about how, they talk a lot about internal and, mission, vision, values, and purpose and everything that they want to be. And then you go to their website externally, or you go to their social media externally, and what do you see? The company talks about their product. If you go to WD-40's website or you go to WD-40's social media, what do you see? They talk about their people. They talk about their tribe. They talk about their culture. You actually have to scroll below the fold to the bottom to even find pictures of their products, because their people and their purpose and their culture are front and center. And that is what good looks like.
That's incredible. That really is such great examples of really what good looks like. And thank you guys for being here. We are running out of time, unfortunately. So I'm going to ask if I have a couple last questions to wrap us up with. What advice, just one quick piece of advice that you would give leaders who are looking to put purpose back into their organizations or looking to take their purpose to the next level? If there's something quick and easy you can give without giving it all away.
I'll go first. It's not about you.
So mic drops. So now Davin and I can't speak.
No, it's right. Gary's right. Purpose is an others focused thing. It is not about you. It's about others. Purpose is about the impact that you make individually or organizationally on others. And so the real quick thing that I would say is, cheap plug, but remember your purpose point. What was the reason that as a company, you went into business in the first place beyond profit? What was the difference, the impact that you wanted to make, that you initially invited people to be a part of? And remind yourselves of that and remind them of that, of what they're a part of, and center the impact and the difference that you want to make around whatever that original thought was. I mean, that's why you're here. And individually, what is it that you bring to that? What are the gifts, talents, abilities, experiences, insights that you have that can help contribute to that thing that is bigger than yourself, that you give so much of your time to, that you're never going to get back every single day?
Yeah, guys, that's so well said. And I think that, I agree it's about others. I also believe that we have to learn to lead in before we can lead out. And I think the best gift that you can give your people is to lead yourself really well and to deliver that consistency that we talked about in terms of how you show up. And so really clarifying, what is your intent? Garry said it earlier, like I did a podcast series I have a podcast called Building Championship Mindsets. And I did a series in COVID. They were just daily mental minutes. And one of them was, how do you want to be remembered on the back end of COVID as a leader? Do you want people to be like, dude, he got so scared and was so irrational and emotional or angry or pretended like it wasn't happening and buried their head in the sand? Like, how do you want to be remembered as a leader through this season? And think about those things. And then, all the questions Davin just said about like, what's important to you? How do you show up in those elements? And then just be consistent. That doesn't mean that you're perfect. I think sometimes when we set out to be a purposeful leader, we get so afraid to make mistakes. And then all we do is just spend time protecting and defending what facade we're trying to build, instead of just being like, guys, I'm trying, I totally messed up. Here's how we're going to adjust. Here's how we're going to move forward. But lead in, and then just what's the next step to start leading out? Get on this journey yourself, get your people on this journey, and forgive and move on to the next when it doesn't go well. But take steps today, because the world needs it badly. Yeah. In every country that we are in every part of the world, like, we need leaders who understand the opportunity that they have to be a force for good in individual lives, in their organization, and in the communities where they live, work, and play. And the only hope we have as a world is leaders to make that choice, to create that environment, and start seeing their purpose to serve the world around them.
Life is not a game of perfect. Life is a game of purpose.
Wow.
So good.
Cannot wait for the Purpose Summit in May. This is just, a very quick little touch point of what we can expect from the 3 days that you guys have got coming up. What are you most looking forward to at the Purpose Summit at Davin?
There's been a lot of conferences and summits and things that I've been to and spoken at. And, typically they bring together a lot of great speakers and thought leaders and business leaders. And far too often people will come and, they'll come and they'll give their one talk. They kind of parachute in and they parachute out. What I'm most excited about is that the speakers, the authors, the thought leaders, the business leaders that are all dedicating their time to come to the summit, none of them are parachuting in and parachuting out. They're all there to not only contribute to the conversation, but then to also glean from each other, from the conversation, so that we can go back and make a greater difference together. And so the biggest thing that I'm excited about is to be in the same room for 3 days with some of the most amazing thought leaders, authors, and speakers that I've learned from over the years, like, Garry, like a Chester Elton, like Amber, so many other people that will be there who are literally speaking into this conversation and living it out. And they're not just there for a pep talk, right? They're there because we're championing a movement. We're championing a different mindset, a different way of leading, a different way of conducting business in this world. And it just encourages me deeply that there are so many leaders that their time is valuable. And they think that spending 3 days of their time at Notre Dame with each other is more valuable than anywhere else that they could be in May.
Amber, what are you looking forward to the most?
He stole mine. Being with these incredible people. I believe that iron sharpens iron, and man, to learn and to grow together through this, the word, I'm a little bit of a nerd, and so I like definitions. And so the word inspire, the definition of inspire is to breathe life into. And I believe that these 3 days are going to breathe new life into every person there, into every business that's represented. And I can't wait to have new life breathed into me by all of the people and the energy that's going to be there. And so, if you're looking at coming, like, don't delay, because there's always going to be a reason why you shouldn't be there. And the more reasons that come to mind of why you shouldn't be there, it's probably the greater reason why you should be there. And I would just encourage you to make that commitment to be there, because again, now more than ever, we need to make some shifts in our world. And instead of waiting for, you know, any government in the world or any healthcare system or any education system or any other system, like, let's just start today, individuals making that choice. And if we do that and all link arms in that journey, we'll create a movement that's strong enough to make some waves and bring this shift in the world that we all desire.
Yes.
Yeah. Garry, do you have anything specific other than what's already been mentioned that you're looking forward to?
All of the above, being with real people, learning from great people, 3 days together, and giving away dolls.
Yes. Yes.
So we can pin him to the wall so we never
That's
come
it.
off again. You stay on the wall, Al.
Oh, it's so good.
This entire conversation has literally been so good. Really, it has. You guys are so motivating and inspirational. Thank you. Thanks to Davin, Amber, and Garry for sharing their incredible expertise with us this afternoon. And thank you to everyone who joined us for this illuminating conversation. There's going to be a whole lot more of this at the Purpose Summit. Please make sure to get your tickets for the Purpose Summit now. It's happening in May. So if you want to come, you got to act fast. And again, Work is offering a $200 gift if you purchase tickets using the code WORTH200. So we hope to see you there. Make sure you check out Amber's new book. We're super excited. It hit Amazon #1. Congrats, Amber. Garry, thanks for being with us. Davin, Amber, thanks for being with us. This has been incredible. Thank you all for, joining us. It was a really wonderful conversation. We hope to see you at the Purpose Summit at Notre Dame in May. Have a lovely rest of your day and a great week. And thanks again for joining. See you next time.